This happened many years ago. I'm a structural engineer, and at the time, I was finishing up my graduate thesis on concrete degradation in marine environments. It was very boring, but it's what got me invited to Japan. This is all relevant, by the way. I was in Nagasaki for an academic conference. There was this professor I'd been corresponding with who had done extensive research on post-industrial decay. His name was Dr. Yamamoto, and he pulled some strings and arranged something I never thought I'd get access to: a research permit for Hashima Island. If you don't know Hashima, you've probably seen pictures of it without realizing. It's this tiny island off the coast of Nagasaki that looks like a battleship, completely covered in crumbling concrete apartment blocks. It used to be a coal mining operation, one of the most densely populated places on Earth at its peak. They abandoned it in the 70s when the coal ran out, and it's been rotting ever since. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. Tourists can technically visit, but only on guided tours that stick to a narrow concrete path along the seawall. Civilians are strictly forbidden from entering the actual buildings due to structural integrity concerns. But I wasn't subject to the same restrictions, which was thrilling and a little scary. I had to sign an exhaustive stack of papers, basically waiving my right to damages if I injured myself or worse. The morning of the visit, I took an early ferry from Nagasaki. It wasn't a tourist boat, but a smaller vessel arranged through the research office. It was just me and my escort, a guy named Tishi. He didn't talk much. I didn't mind because I was so excited about the excursion. The approach to Hashima plays tricks on your eyes. When it first appears, it looks deceptively small, almost insignificant. But as you get closer, the scale hits you. The seawall wrapping around the island, the apartment blocks stacked on top of each other. It was something else entirely. I had seen hundreds of photos, but none of them prepared me for actually standing there. The place felt like a true wonder. Tishi gave me a briefing on the dock. I had access to several buildings beyond the normal tour route. He actually had a list, but there were strict rules. Stay on designated paths. Don't enter anything marked with red tape. Don't remove anything. Don't touch anything you don't need to. And stay within visual range of him at all times. He said that last part twice. I also had to wear a hard hat, steel-toed boots, and bulky reinforced work pants that made walking awkward. Despite all the gear, the first couple of hours were amazing. I was taking photos, making notes, completely in my element. Tishi followed at a distance, occasionally glancing at his watch. He clearly wanted this over with. Around midday, we entered one of the large residential blocks. The stairs were intact, barely. You could see daylight through the cracks in the landings. Tishi stayed on the ground floor while I went up, which I thought was strange given his earlier stay-in-sight rule. But I didn't argue. Honestly, it was kind of nice not having him hovering over me. I reached the 4th floor and was examining a section of wall where the concrete had separated from the rebar when I noticed something off. The dust patterns. There was dust everywhere. Decades of it. But there was also a path, like someone had been walking there regularly. Not recently, maybe, but often enough that the dust hadn't fully settled back. I followed it with my eyes, and it led to a room at the end of the corridor. I should have gone back down to tell Tishi. That would have been the smart thing. But I was curious, and I knew he'd probably just shut it down. So I went anyway. I walked carefully down the corridor and pushed the door open. Immediately, I noticed 2 things. The first was the smell. It was wrong. Not something natural, but not something I could identify as human either. I know that sounds strange, but I had never smelled anything like it before. The second thing was the wall. When I touched it, it was warm, noticeably warmer than any other surface on the island. I stood there for about 30 seconds trying to make sense of it. Maybe the sun. That was my first thought, even though there were no gaps in the ceiling. And maybe the smell came from animals, even though I wasn't aware of any animals living on the island. I went back down and told Tishi. His reaction was immediate and strange. He didn't ask questions. He didn't seem curious. He just said it was impossible, that no humans or animals lived on the island. He didn't even ask me to show him the room. When I insisted, he refused, flat out. It was unsettling. We continued the tour, but I started paying much closer attention, and I kept noticing things. Nothing obvious, no clothes, no trash, but signs, marks, disturbances. Something had been there. I say something because I couldn't tell if it was human or animal. That was the most confusing part. At one point, I mentioned it again. This time, Tishi didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out a radio and spoke rapid Japanese into it. I had no idea what he was saying or who he was talking to. It was the first time he had used the radio all day. When I asked, he said he was checking the schedule. I didn't believe him, but what could I do? We kept going. We reached a taller residential building near the center of the island. Tishi hesitated at the entrance. He actually stopped walking, then followed me in. That was new. Earlier, he seemed bored. Now, he was alert. The stairwell was narrow but stable. We climbed about 5 floors. This time, he stayed right behind me. Then I entered one of the corner rooms, and that's when I saw it. Against the wall, a pile of blankets and empty water bottles. There was no doubt anymore. Someone was living there. I turned to show Tishi, but when I stepped out of the room, he was gone. Just gone. And that's when the fear hit me. I don't know why, but seeing those items in that room didn't terrify me until I realized I was alone up there. It was like Tishi disappearing unlocked something in my brain. Only then was I able to process how bad the situation really was. There was someone else on that island. I suddenly felt a very intense urge to strip off my gear and scratch my skin. My whole body was itching, and I was starting to panic. I made my way quickly back toward the stairwell we had used, thinking I'd just run down and end the trip immediately. But when I turned the corner, the stairs were blocked. A pile of rubble had collapsed across the landing. There was no way through. I didn't stop to think about whether it had fallen, naturally, or if someone had placed it there. I just ran. I turned and sprinted down the corridor, past the room I had just come from, praying there was another way out. I didn't care about safety anymore. I didn't care about the structure. I just needed to get out. As I was running, I heard movement behind me, footsteps, coming from somewhere down the hallway. I didn't turn around. There was no way I was turning around. I just kept running. The problem was, the building was like a maze. I couldn't think clearly. I didn't know where I was going. It felt like I was looping through the same corridors over and over again. And the whole time, I could hear footsteps behind me. At first, I thought it might be Tishi, but then I realized there was more than one set, multiple people. I was being followed. I finally found another stairwell. I didn't even walk down it. I practically jumped. I don't remember everything after that clearly. Just flashes, daylight, open ground, running. Then the dock. Tishi was standing there, just standing there, like nothing had happened. The moment I saw how calm he was, something in me snapped. I went from terrified to furious. I started yelling at him. I told him everything. about the room, about the people, about him disappearing. I even accused him of blocking the stairs. He didn't react, not even a little. It was like he wasn't even listening. I wanted to grab him, shake him, force him to respond, but I couldn't. He was my only way off that island. He had all the control. I had none. The way he stood there, completely unfazed, only made it worse. At one point, I actually found myself hoping that whoever had been in that building would show up, just so he would be forced to admit something was wrong. Eventually, I stopped yelling, not because I felt better, but because it was pointless. After I calmed down, he finally spoke, not about anything I had said, not about what I had seen. He just said, "We are leaving." That was it. No explanation, nothing. We got on the boat. The ride back felt longer than it should have. I didn't feel safe, not even with him. I kept thinking about what had happened, about the footsteps, about the blocked stairs, about the fact that he knew something, or worse, that he had something to do with it. But we made it back to the mainland, and that was that. As soon as I got somewhere safe, the first thing I did was try to report what I had seen, that there were people on Hashima Island, that someone was living there, that something was wrong. The only person I could think to contact was Dr. Yamamoto, the one who arranged everything, but I couldn't reach him. No response, no replies, nothing. 2 weeks passed. By then, I was back in the United States. Still nothing. It was like he had disappeared. I tried reporting it to the authorities, but nothing came of it. I don't think anyone believed me. Years have passed since then, and I still think about it. But strangely, what bothers me the most isn't what happened on the island. It's what happened after. The silence. The disappearance of Dr. Yamamoto. The fact that no one followed up. No investigation. Nothing. The thing I regret the most is not pushing harder, not digging deeper. If I had spoken Japanese, if I hadn't had to leave so quickly, maybe I could have found answers. But I didn't. And now, I probably never will.